Welcome everyone to NEWHD NYC with your host Ray K. Available on all major podcast platforms and powered by NEWHD Media. Now here's your host, Ray K.
Hey guys, I have an exciting guest today. This is very timely considering the political environment we're in now. Dennis was a senior advisor for Al Gore. He worked in the White House with President Clinton and Al Gore. I'm going to talk about those years and a lot of stuff, including music. We're going to talk about sports. Dennis is a strategic advisor in grassroots, political campaigns, I guess I'll call it. We'll talk a little bit about that. And Dennis, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ray. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. How are things in Tennessee with the COVID situation now?
It's been pretty crazy lately. You probably know Tennessee and Nashville in particular are basically the hot zone for COVID-19 right now.
Okay.
It's really, really bad here in Tennessee. And of course, this past weekend, Christmas Friday, we had a bombing, a suicide bomber. And a few months ago,
that was in Nashville.
Yeah, that was in
Wow.
Nashville, downtown Nashville. And at the beginning of this year, we had a tornado come through and really do a number on a number of counties and cities and towns here in Middle Tennessee. So it's been a crazy year, to say nothing.
So you're looking forward to 21 like everybody, I
Yeah,
assume,
I can't
correct?
wait. I think everybody is, right? You said, yeah.
How's the mood there after the bombing? What's it like?
It's pretty crazy. I mean, I think as is the case here in Nashville all the time, and probably a lot of places around the States, people rally around each other. Once everybody's kind of overcome the initial shock, it's like, okay, now we need to get together and rebuild and figure out maybe why this happened and move beyond it and get things up and running again. But people are really very resilient down here and very team oriented and want to bring Nashville back to where it was before and even greater. So.
Okay. It's good to hear. The human spirit always eventually seems to come through.
I think that's true.
Yeah. Dennis, tell us about how you got into the White House. I mean, you were young. I mean, right? You were in your late 20s. Yeah.
I was 26 at the time, actually. I had a background in working both in political affairs, political campaigns, both national and international at the time, as well as having worked doing legislative and government relations work for a couple of international labor unions here in the United States, teaching legislative process and grassroots lobbying to its membership. As a really young guy, I was working back in 1988 on the Dukakis for President campaign. Massachusetts Governor Mike Dukakis ran for president at the time, and I spent my junior year college summer in Boston working on the campaign. And then once I graduated, I jumped back on the campaign trail and spent the next few months working around the country for the Dukakis campaign. And then kind of after that, caught my breath. We lost that campaign.
During the campaign, from my point of view, like it just felt like he was going to lose. I mean, do you get that sense as you're on the campaign, or are you so into it that you don't even think of that? Or, I mean, does that come into it? Maybe at the very end, but during it, do you think, hey, this is kind of a long shot?
I think absolutely. In the summer of 1987, it was a long shot. And those of us, I'm originally from Massachusetts. So for me, it was my governor. I was familiar with him. But he wasn't necessarily a well-known national figure at the time. So at the time you're thinking it's a long shot. And then as time goes on and the primaries take place and you're still in it and you're still in it again, it's you start to realize, hey, anything can happen. And then you start believing, as you should, that, this can be won. And there was a point in the campaign around the conventions in 1988, we were up by, I think, 18 points. And it only, unfortunately went down from there. But yeah, we all thought we could win this. Did we think it would be crazy if we were able to? Absolutely. Coming from where we came from and the candidate himself. But, you have to buy into it. You really do. And we all did and fought to the very end. So.
Did you meet Olympia? But curious.
Yeah, she was great. She's terrific. His whole family was fantastic. His kids, everybody was so down to earth, very fun to work with. Not like you'd expect maybe. And she
Okay.
was fantastic. She was really fun. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So now, how do you get into the White House from there?
Well, I guess it's like anything. Your reputation, your work ethic, people who have worked with you. So after that campaign, I spent a couple of years in Washington working there with people I had worked with on the campaign and some other people. I worked on an international public relations and kind of communications campaign representing a foreign entity. And then I went up to Rhode Island and worked on a Senate campaign, a U.S. Senate campaign for Senator Claiborne Pell, who was a very famous figure in the U.S. Senate, his last campaign in 1990. And then I went back to Washington, D.C., and was working for a labor union there doing government relations and legislative affairs. And I got the call. It was 1992, early. And, midway through the year, I got the call from the Clinton campaign, and they wanted to know if I could help them out. And I said, I was working in DC. They spoke to the leadership at the union who released me or put me on loan to them. And so I spent the next 6 months or so working for the Clinton campaign and was assigned to head up the logistics and operations for the convention for whoever the vice presidential nominee was going to be. And it turned out it was Al Gore. I had spent 3 months in New York City. And as you can imagine, as a 26-year-old in New York City, that was rough duty. It was fantastic. Having the convention in New York City was great. And that's where I met then Senator Gore and his staff. And then I was asked to be the trip director. The best way to describe the trip director for a presidential campaign is really kind of like the tour manager of a rock band.
Okay.
And I was in charge of the road show. So for the next few months after the convention, I was on the plane traveling with Senator Gore and his staff and Secret Service and the national media and others as we made our way around the country campaigning. And it was my responsibility to direct the advance teams on the ground that set up all the logistics and events and everything and be by the side of the candidate. And then, we won. They won.
Now, unlike the Dukakis, like being the regular citizen on the ground, I always kind of could sense who's going to win. I almost had this inborn talent. You kind of know it, and you just knew that Clinton was coming on. I mean, you just kind of felt that he's going to do it.
Yeah.
Was it more of a feeling for being on that campaign than Dukakis, that you kind of more hopeful, but you go, hey, we're gonna do this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
For me personally, I was not a big fan of his at the outset. I was, again, a Massachusetts guy. I had worked one summer for Paul Tsongas. Senator Tsongas was running for president as well. So I did a short stint for them up in New Hampshire. And, I really wasn't feeling it for Governor Clinton at the time. And then I was asked to go to Pennsylvania for him, and basically was set up with him to meet him. And, we kind of did a little back and forth, and, immediately, like a lot of people say, once you meet him, it's just an amazing experience. And I bought in 100%. And yes, so as that campaign went on, and then when Senator Gore joined, these guys were in their 40s. They were a younger generation candidate. They were brilliant. I told Governor Clinton at the time, I'd never met anybody who knew more about so many different subjects than him. He's a brilliant guy, and you know the deal. Back when he was running, and even when he was in the White House, this sense of youthful vigor and excitement that these guys brought to the offices. We were all in 100%, and we knew, I think, at a certain point this was ours to lose, and at a certain point we were like, we're going to win this thing.
Did you have to deal? I mean, there were all these, the allegations. Did you have to deal with that yourself, or was that a different department?
Well, luckily for me, or personally, I was working with then Senator Gore, so he was the VP candidate. So I was traveling with him most of the time. We would do meetups and campaign stops with Governor Clinton at the time, but for the most part, we were focused on Senator Gore.
Okay.
and getting everything right for him. You deal with some of that other stuff in a, very personal way. It's always on your mind. You hear this stuff and, you have to keep it separate from what you're doing on your job. You can't let it, become emotional about it. Luckily for me, there were people who were working, of course, me and everyone else. Governor Clinton had a very talented, smart staff working around him who advised him and worked with the media and, basically responded to those questions and issues. So
Okay.
very lucky. I consider myself extremely lucky to have been part of that campaign, and especially at such a young age.
Right.
Now, I was 26. Now there are kids who are, and yeah, a little bit then, there were kids who were 20, 21 who were involved in that campaign. When I was, then got the job in the White House, that basically I went into the White House the week after the inauguration in '93. My assistant was 19 years old.
Hmm.
You don't think about it then. I was 26. She was 19. And I had some other assistants who were also very young. It's just amazing, very heady stuff. And I mean, the Trump folks too, this time around, they had some very young staffers as well in those age groups. The Obama administration, the same thing, probably the Bush folks too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
You remember
great
the first
experience.
time walking into the White House? Is that something you
Um,
remember or?
the first time I walked into the White House, I got kicked out of the White House.
Okay. Okay.
It was during the transition period in 1992. It was December, I think, late November, early December of 1992. And what traditionally happens during the transition is you do exactly that. It's a transitional period. You meet with your counterparts, you exchange information. They kind of walk you through everything, what to expect in the position and how everything works there and who you're going to need to know. So we had, myself and a number of other folks, 3 or 4 other folks, had a meeting set up with our counterparts from the Bush administration. And we all trudged over to the White House and went into the West Wing outer lobby, and we made our presence known and registered for our meeting. And we were instructed to have a seat on, in the chairs and the couches there. And so
In
we
the
were
West Wing itself, those chairs you see there, right across from the
yeah,
desk.
as soon as you walk into the West Wing lobby, as it's called,
Okay.
where the Marine Guards are. I don't know if
Right.
you're, yeah.
I visited when I was 12 as on
Yeah.
a tour. That's about it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you
Yeah.
went to the West Wing or not, but
I don't remember.
anyway, if you watch the TV show The West Wing,
Right.
you'll see it. Basically, it's just like it is in the TV
Okay.
show.
Okay.
And so we sat there and we were waiting for our appointment, and Mrs. Bush, Barbara Bush, God love her, she came walking through the lobby and saw us all there, a bunch of young people, and said, inquired, "Who's that?" And so the lobby, the receptionist in the White House, in the West Wing lobby, told her who we were. She looked over at us and sneered at us and said, "The body's not even cold yet. Get them out of here."
Wow. Okay.
And we were asked to
Wow. She's been
leave.
known to be tough. I guess you saw it in
Yeah.
action. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And luckily for me, years later, I had the great fortune to work with Mrs. Bush and former President Bush when I was with the PGA Tour. And I reminded her of that story, and she remembered it like it was yesterday. And we both had such a huge laugh about it. It was very funny, very funny.
Now you've been in the Oval Office, Dennis, I assume, right? I saw pictures of you with,
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just for the, for our viewers, what's that like? You walk in, like what's how big is it? What's the whole scene like?
It's an amazing experience for someone, who, from the time I was a teen was very interested in government and politics and history, especially. I talk about Massachusetts a lot because I think that's where a lot of this interest came from growing up in Massachusetts and around the Kennedy mystique. And, so I was a history guy, and the first time walking into the Oval Office, your breath is taken away. It really is. It's one of those things, A, you probably never think you're going to experience for yourself. And then B, you just find yourself, looking around at everything, taking it all in, noticing things that you've seen in pictures. And it really does take your breath away. You get goosebumps. I get goosebumps just talking about it now. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. It, like the Resolute desk, is that small? It looks small. Like,
It's
you know.
actually pretty, I mean, it's big. It's,
Oh, it is.
you
Okay.
know,
It's a
it's,
big desk. Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
think so. I mean, I
Okay.
think it's, I have a desk in my study that I think is probably a little bit smaller than that. Yeah, it's actually a pretty sizable desk,
Okay. Okay.
and it's
Okay.
beautiful. They
Right.
take such great care. The folks who work at the White House and the preservation folks, and the you know, General Services Administration, they just take such great care of these historic pieces. It looks brand new, really
How old
spectacular.
is it? Who was the first president to, you know,
Oh,
sit
you
behind
got
it?
me.
Oh,
You
okay.
got
I mean,
me.
is
I
it
think
over
it's from the
100 years
18.
old? Is it
I
like,
think it's
you
from the
know,
1800s, though,
it
isn't it?
is. Okay,
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah,
I'm
who,
not sure.
Andrew Jackson or, you know, that
Yeah,
far probably?
yeah,
Abraham Lincoln, I guess, right?
yeah. Probably. I don't
Okay.
know if he used
We
it,
got to
but
check it
yeah,
out. We got to
yeah.
check it out.
You know, for me, the visual, of course, is, you know, in the Oval Office, and you see the president's desk is, of course, the Kennedy kids, you know,
Right.
playing underneath and stuff. So
Right, right,
yeah,
right. They were under the desk, I think, right? I think.
yeah, they hid
Yeah.
in there on Halloween, and you know, there's
Yeah,
some pretty
yeah.
famous pictures of
Right,
them.
right. I want to talk about your exact role, Dennis, but
Sure.
in the transition, it just, you know, I guess you were right there. It just seems such a daunting thing, like government. Like it just seems so much. I mean, is it, or I mean, how does it even work? I mean, does anyone even know?
Yeah,
Or
that's a very good question. Does anybody really know?
yeah,
I think we as a society, an American government system, are very fortunate that there are a group of people who have been there. They are what we call career service people
okay,
who work in the federal government and have been there for years and years. They're non-political appointees who basically are the caretakers of our government. So we, you know, we step into this. We're kind of pieces that are rotated in every 4 or 8 years, and you know, have to assume these responsibilities. I'll be honest, we could not have done it. I could never have done it without the assistance of people who had been there in these non-political roles. You know, these career folks who are the experts and the keepers of our government. So you learn very quickly. The funny thing is, I remember, you know, starting my first week there, it didn't hit me, I don't think, until we left. You know, until maybe the first time I got on Air Force Two or Marine Two. You know, Marine Two and Air Force Two for the vice president. That this was all real. Before that, and that was only probably a month into the job. But you know, you're learning everything on the fly. You know, you have talents and abilities, and you've been hired for a specific reason, and you have great responsibilities. But you don't really appreciate what it is you're doing, and what you know you're being relied upon to do for a little bit, and then when it hits you, it's a tremendous responsibility, very high pressure.
it
Um,
is. Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
Greatest experience of my life, but extremely high pressure. And not just me. I mean, you know, my role there at the White House, you know, my official title was Deputy Director of Scheduling, Director of Advance, and Trip Director for the Vice President. You know, I had kind of three roles all at once. So it was a lot to balance, but they were all intermingled, you know, intertangled with each other, the responsibilities. But, you know, I mean, there were people, let's be serious, there were people far more educated, far more serious positions in the government that, you know, transition from administration to administration. The national security folks, you know, even the secret, especially the Secret Service, you know, all these positions, the people who are dealing with the Economic Council and the environment, you know, the State Department. You know, I would, in all honesty, what I did was fun. It was great. It was exciting. It was fun. It was very detail oriented, logistically oriented. But also, you know, I was traveling with the vice president wherever he went, domestically and overseas. You know, it was my responsibility to head the delegation on what we called pre-advances overseas, where a small group of us would go overseas and meet with government officials from other countries where the
That's the
vice
first
president.
start, Dennis. You go overseas before the vice
Yes.
president goes.
Yeah.
Okay,
On
so I'd like
foreign
to hear
trips.
how that works. Okay.
Yeah. So on foreign trips, for example, the pre-advance, as we call it, the National Security Office will have already met with the vice president and say, the government, the administration has a priority. The president has asked you to do this, or, this is part of what our agenda is. You're going to go meet with, let's say the deputy premier of Russia. And so we would, as a small group of national security advisors, Secret Service, White House military aide, advance office scheduling representative, White House medical officer. If the second lady was going to be involved in it, she would have one or two staff people on the trip with us, as well as a State Department representative. And we would go over anywhere from, usually a month, sometimes 6 weeks out. And we would meet with our counterparts and develop a program, a schedule of events that we were going to do, hash out meeting details, work with them to accomplish our goals. Of course, they had their own goals too as the host. And it was our job really to kind of make sure what we wanted to do got done, but also at the same time allow them to do what they needed to do, as long as it didn't, do anything negative or have any negative impact on the vice president and or the Clinton administration. And so again, 26, 27 years old, finding myself seated at in Russia, for example, on our first pre-advance, around a huge round conference table that seated, I guess there were probably 40 people in a table that you would see in a James Bond movie, negotiating from 10 yards away with your counterpart, through interpreters, and you look to your right and to your left, and there's a 21-year-old person over there, there's a 19-year-old person here, and then there's a national security advisor, the adults in the room, as I would say, the vice president's military aide. It hits you. You're all of a sudden, hey, time to grow up, kid. It's not all fun and games anymore. You're here as the official representative and lead of the delegation for the United States government, and you're representing the Clinton-Gore administration. And it just, snaps into your head. Okay, fun, my youth is over and now it's time to be an adult. And it's amazing. It really does take your breath away. But it was so much fun. And it wasn't a power thing. It was one of those things where you looked around every day and you said to yourself, I can't believe I'm doing this. What a great experience to be able to serve the, I know it sounds goofy, but serve the American people and to serve this president and vice president. It was an amazing experience.
Now, is everything paid for, like food, entertainment, or is it a budget that you get for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have, both the State Department has a budget and the Office of the Vice President, and or if it's a presidential trip, the President's office has a travel budget. But on the foreign trips, the State Department it's on their budget. And so everything's paid for. Typically, depending upon how many stops, for example, in a pre-advance that we were taking, like our first pre-advance in 1993, we were out for 2 weeks. We went to Frankfurt, Germany, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, 2 stops in Russia, and then back to Germany before heading back to the United States. We were gone for 2 weeks. So we had a 707, one of the Air Force 2 707s at the time, at our disposal, and we used that everywhere we went. In some cases, you had to rely upon local government, military equipment and or transport. We did a trip, just as an example, we were in Amman, Jordan, and we were going down to look at a historic site, and we had to take Jordanian military helicopters. And you just never know, what kind of equipment you're getting in sometimes. In Russia too, we took Russian military helicopters up beyond the Arctic Circle, up to a place called Nadim, which is in the natural gas fields north of the Arctic Circle. And we flew in the old Russian military helicopters, the kind with, if you've seen a propane tank in somebody's backyard, the huge, 12-foot that fuel tank was inside the helicopter. and you're just looking at each other going, I hope, I hope we don't crash, or I hope nothing happens. You just never knew, sometimes you had to put your trust. It's just the way it was in foreign military and foreign governments. So
did you ever feel like you were in danger,
yes.
from other, well, not only the
Yeah.
safety, but like the other military people, I mean,
Never, never danger, but you always knew. Another example, when we first went to China, we had a military liaison who was our liaison / host with us, who went with us everywhere, and he was stuck to me like glue. And in fact, if you go to YouTube, I can share it with you later. There's video of our trip to Beijing, and he's with me every step of the way. You knew they were there to watch, to listen, to pick up any kind of information they could. When we were in Russia, of course, you knew you were always, the first warning we got there was you're always on video and you're always on audio. So just watch what you say and watch
including hotel rooms, everywhere.
Everything. We were given, great background briefings on this stuff. Some funny things happened, in regards to that, where, things you actually would see in a movie these days, people testing mirrors to see if there was a camera behind them, and how to locate where the cameras were. It was that kind of stuff. You were well briefed. You knew what to do. You knew what not to do. Sometimes a couple people on our traveling delegation, did some stupid things, didn't think very much. And, luckily nothing bad happened, but, they were notified, hey, we told you.
Wow. It was filmed.
Yeah, it was
audioed.
filmed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, before the vice president arrives or President Clinton arrives,
Yeah.
I'm sure is there a safety,
Yes.
checking all the manhole covers, or does all that happen?
Everything. You name
Everything
it,
is,
it happened.
you
Both
name
domestically,
it. Okay.
domestically and overseas.
Okay.
A lot of the responsibility overseas, of course, is put in the hands of your overseas hosts. And they're not doing it alone, but they do it in conjunction with Secret Service and the embassy. Domestically, yes. The enormity of any kind of movement by one or the other, or a visit, the planning that goes into it is amazing. The detail, you talk about manhole covers and things like that. Yes. When the president comes to town, yes, Secret Service, local police, and local power companies and such go through the streets, and in a lot of cases they bolt. First of all, they go into the systems underneath to check them out for safety, and yes, they bolt the manhole covers down, so there's no risk of anybody getting under there, popping up, or if an explosion were to take place, the manhole cover would injure somebody in the motorcade, God forbid, or people on the streets. So yeah, every little detail is taken care of. Everything is checked out. Secret Service does an amazing job, and are some of the greatest people I've ever worked with. In that position, members of the U.S. military and the Secret Service were the best people I ever worked with. Not just because they were so professional and so great at their jobs, they were just great people in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, they lay it out every day. Very good to work with.
And this is all for a 2-hour visit sometimes, right? I mean, all this goes on, and
yeah, everywhere the principal goes or is planning on going, or might go, is checked out by Secret Service, local police, FBI, you name it, just to make sure everything's okay. Nothing is left, nothing is taken for granted. Nothing is left unchecked. And when I say, sometimes on the schedule, we'll put, oh, well, the principal may go here, and do a meeting, or the principal may go here and do a drop by at a local restaurant and grab a milkshake. And that drop by, what we call an OTR, because it's not officially on the schedule, it's off the record OTR. Excuse me. You can't have them just walk in naked, so to speak.
So there's no spontaneity. You can't, Gore can't say, okay, I want to go get ice cream over there. It's not on the schedule, but let's just go there.
If he were to do that, we would immediately stop him in his tracks and say, give us a minute. Secret Service would go, send a couple guys up there immediately, look around, check it out, make
Okay.
sure everything's okay, and then we'd go. And they would be able to do it that quickly.
Okay.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Is there any risk, Dennis? Because I always wonder, when you see President Trump go to North Korea, because their guys are there too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they got would it be easy for bad things to happen because their guys are there? They control a lot of stuff, and I mean, it never seems to happen, but I just always wonder. It seems like it's easy for something to happen.
Yeah, I don't know how, I guess the short answer is yes. Anything can happen at any time. We were always, we always lived and we're always told, um, if somebody really wants to get at somebody and they're willing to put their life on the line to do it, they're going to do it.
So that is
Um,
true. You always hear that. If like
yeah,
in the Godfather, if someone wants to, they can.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It's a matter of whether or not, they want to live with the resulting
They're gonna die.
outcome. They're going
Yeah.
to die or they're going to
Right.
go to jail or whatever.
Right.
But what Secret Service and local police, all these groups, these law enforcement officials, and any stop that you do, what they do is they minimize that risk. That's their job, to minimize the risk, to not place the principals in a position of danger, but also to work with us to allow us to have the principals do what they need to do in their office. When you're overseas, yes, you never know. Again, it's all you can do is minimize and cut the risk. You never want to take too great a chance. I'll give you an example of that. We were on a trip to the Middle East with the vice president, and we were in Israel, and we were actually going over for the first time to go to the occupied territories to meet in Palestinian territory with Yasser Arafat and his cabinet, if you will. So I had, on the pre-advance, we went and we were over there, and our advance teams were permitted to go work with them in the occupied territories with Mr. Arafat's team. And remember, his, status at the time was still, very much, is he, a terrorist, or is he the leader of, this country or this, occupied lands? And it was it was both, really. You don't know. You don't know what can happen. And Secret Service, of course, did their jobs, and they worked with his representatives to ensure that nothing would happen that would embarrass or hurt either side. And luckily, Mr. Arafat knew, as did the people working for him, that anything negative that happened would reflect poorly on them and would hurt the chances of them establishing themselves, in the world government leadership. So they didn't want anything to happen either. But I'll tell you, when we did the actual trip, and we were driving in the motorcade to the border to go over into the occupied territories, we stopped and we did a handoff, if you will. The motorcade came to a complete stop. Israeli military helicopters were flying overhead. On the other side, there was about a 25-yard buffer zone. And on the other side of that buffer zone were the Palestinian representatives and security and military. And we knew we were being put into that situation, of course. We all got out of the car, myself, Secret Service, Israeli Shin Bet, as well as Mossad, and gathered literally in front of the vice president's vehicle. And we did a handoff. And they said, listen, Godspeed, you're out of our hands now. We can't do anything. You're in their hands. If anything should happen, you'll have to work with them on this. We can't come in here. And, I remember looking around just thinking to myself, holy crap. I mean, you want to be scared. That's I think that was one of the two most scared I've ever been in the job, because you realize, you're being released into the hands of folks, that you don't know. You don't know who they are. You don't know what kind of support they can give you. You don't know what lies ahead. You know that Secret Service and our military have been working, as well as the Israelis, to minimize everything, but you just don't know. Everything worked out fine. It was an amazing experience. But I'll never forget that moment when, we all looked around and shook hands and hugged each other, because you didn't know. You just didn't know.
Right.
So,
Well, you, I'm sure, logically, I would think, Dennis, you probably were around some pretty bad people, right? I mean, some of these dictators, Assad, was that the Syrian guy? I mean, these are some pretty
Yeah,
nasty guys that you
yeah,
were around, right?
yeah. Sometimes, I think one of the biggest, this is a personal admission. I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was when I was, I happened to be not at my doing, but I was put together with Fidel Castro. And back in the 90s, we did not have diplomatic relations with the Cubans. Castro was viewed as an international terrorist. He was a bad guy. We were not dealing with him directly or even indirectly. And we were at Nelson Mandela's inauguration in Pretoria, South Africa. This is, I think, April or May. I can't remember. I think it was April of 1994. And where I and the other members of our senior innermost delegation, myself, our military aide, our national security advisor, and believe it or not, our photographer and myself were seated in the VIP seating area for the inauguration. And I just happened to look over to my right, and there was, you're talking about world leaders from all over. South Africa at the time, you know, the ANC was a communist, or viewed as, and was really a communist organization. So, like you said, they were affiliated and associated with some people that our government felt were pretty bad guys, but who had supported them in their fight for freedom and to kill the apartheid regime. So it's kind of a strange, situation. And just as I turned over, and I have photos of this, Fidel Castro is being directed to our row of seats. And, it's our chief of staff, myself, our military aide, and we're all like looking at each other going, please, no, don't put him in our section. What is he doing coming to our seats? And sure enough, he came and sat down right next to me. And I looked up and stood up and shook his hand, and he had his assistant with him, as well as his military aide. And it's a terrible position to be in when you're sitting next to somebody that your government does not, have any kind of political ties with, and has been at basically war for, 35 years. And he was sitting right next to me. And it was one of those really strange situations. Again, I think I was 27, something like that, 28. And I just turned to him and introduced myself to him. I mean, what do you do?
Right.
I probably shouldn't have done it, but I did. And, you're young and you're sitting next to Fidel Castro, and he's a bad guy.
How was his
But
bearing? Did he give across an evil
no,
aura, or?
I'll tell he couldn't have been nicer there. I mean, and this is one of the regrets. I mean, I shouldn't have done this, but what do you do? Shook hands with him. We talked. I talked through his assistant. He spoke English, but he preferred to talk through his assistant. Okay. Made it easier for me, I guess. We exchanged gifts. I gave him a pen from the White House, from the vice president's office. And his assistant, he asked her to give me a cigar, which I still have. And I think at the time he had already quit smoking cigars, but he gave them out as gifts. And so we sat there for a few minutes, and I just, kind of tried to ignore him, and he ignored me a little bit, but we had introduced ourselves. And then one of the escorts realized they placed him in the wrong seats.
Okay.
Which is a good thing. He was supposed to be much more to the front. And so they escorted him out, and we said our goodbyes. We shook hands and we said our goodbyes. And then the funny thing is, after the ceremony, we all went to the presidential residence for the official luncheon. And, I'm standing beside, our official delegation, the vice president, Mrs. Gore, and the first lady, and some others there, the ambassador, and Fidel Castro just walks right up to me and extends his hand and shakes my hand again. And we started talking about baseball. I mean, I just looked around. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And I think everybody in the delegation was like watching, going, what is going on? How do they know each other? And we talked for about 10 minutes. about baseball, believe it or not. And then we took a photo, and he went back to his table. There's so many political sensitivities. There are so many, historical issues that arise. The last thing in the world we would ever have wanted was a picture of me or anybody in our delegation with Fidel Castro. It would have been bad. Luckily, no such picture was ever released at the time. But you don't realize it at the time. You're just kind of,
Right.
in this world of, I can't believe Fidel Castro is coming up to me and wants to know how the Red Sox are going to be this year.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, he should have known they would have been terrible that year. So,
Oh, he actually asked for the Red Sox of all teams.
Right.
How is it? I'm just curious. Is he a big guy? He seems like he's a pretty big dude when you see
Yeah, he
pictures
was
of
like
him.
6'1",
He is?
6'2".
Okay.
But I mean,
okay.
he wasn't like stocky.
Right.
And he was
Right.
older.
Right.
But he was, I think if I remember correctly, he was 6'1", 6'2". I'm 6'1".
Okay.
He was
Okay.
right there. Right there with me.
Right. Does on these
yeah.
trips, like, does he get patted down like Castro before he goes in a meeting, or
No.
they don't?
No.
So they could carry weapons. So out of respect, they let them go.
Yeah, the principles are never
They're
patted
never
down.
okay.
Yeah.
So when Trump is in with Putin in the room,
Yeah.
they could have weapons on him alone.
Who?
basically.
The principals?
Yeah.
It would never happen. I mean,
It wouldn't. Oh,
just
okay.
no. I mean, anything like that, if and it's kind of understood. I mean, there would be no reason for that to happen. You're always going to have your security people around. Usually, there's not usually any time where the principals are left alone.
Okay.
Usually, there's always going to be a Secret Service agent with the president or vice president in a room, standing by. And
Now they have weapons, I assume, right?
Yeah, they're not. Well, on foreign trips, it depends. Things may have changed since I was there. I mean, that was 25 years ago, almost 25 years ago. But yeah, typically, on foreign trips, you're in the hands of the security forces in the host country.
Okay. Okay.
But again, after 9/11, that could completely be different. I'm not sure. So.
Right. What was the nicest place you were in? Was there one place that was so special?
Well, the funny thing is, I mean, there were so many. I was easily in more than 120 countries in my 5.5 years in the White House. The great thing for me, though, was that I was in South Africa so many times. We did what we called at the time a bilateral commission meetings in Russia and in South Africa. And so as a result, every other year we'd be in South Africa and they would be in the United States. So I would do a pre-advanced trip and then the actual trip. So that's like, twice, for 3 years. So I was there 6 times. And one of the most beautiful spots I was in at the time was Cape Town, South Africa, which is just a gorgeous city. One of my top 2 favorite cities in the country, in the world, rather. And I remember the first time we were there, we were sitting at a bar overlooking the sunset on the beach in Camps Bay, which is a beautiful beach community in Cape Town. And just thinking to myself out loud, I said, man, I'd love to live here. And then when I was with the PGA Tour a few years later, 2001, I'm living in Camps Bay, Cape Town, South Africa. Right behind, in a house right behind that bar, right on the beach. So things work out, things work out.
So you had the energy out there somehow and it came around.
And South Africa is easily one of the most beautiful places on the face of the planet. I loved it. I'd go back in a second if the opportunity ever came about.
Right. Yeah. So after your trips then, Dennis, now everyone comes back after the 4 weeks or 6 weeks after the visit, and then it's the next one, and then you just kind of gear up for the next one, other than doing maybe other things that you do. Yeah,
it's a constant flow. I mean, if it's a foreign trip, you come back from the actual, and you're on to the next event domestically, or the next trip domestically, and you're sending advanced teams out to 3 or 4 cities around the country, and you're hopping on a plane again and going to those cities and running through a day or 2 schedule. And yeah, it's constant. It wore me out. I did 5.5 years of that. And I was 27, 26 when I started, and all you can think about is, well, the president and vice president are in their 40s and they're doing it, so you can't complain really. You can't act as if you're tired. They're doing everything you're doing, and they're twice your age, or a little bit less. So you can only imagine the toll. Everybody always talks about, you look at a picture of the president of the United States
Right.
when he goes into office and then when he goes out. Well,
Right.
there's a reason for that.
So it really is grueling, the
Yeah,
president and vice president. It's a full grueling situation.
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
first of all, there are hours. I remember our first year in the White House. I was married at the time, and my wife at the time was the vice president's executive assistant. So she and I were, we'd be in the at work at the White House at 7:30 every morning, and we wouldn't leave until the vice president left, and usually a couple hours afterwards. But in the first year of that administration, if you check the logs, President Clinton and Vice President Gore were there 8 o'clock in the morning until sometimes 11:30 at night. They were working full time. And again, how could we complain if they're doing it?
Right.
We should be doing it too. And we did, but it's grueling. It's exhausting. And they've got, I've got big deal. I've got a schedule and logistics and operations and travel plans and creative things to try and figure out. Big deal. They're the two most powerful people in the world. Imagine what they're going through.
Right. What was and I mean it by, was he a quiet guy? Was he a funny guy? Serious, like Bill Clinton? What was he kind of like, other than what we see publicly?
I honestly believe what you see publicly is who he is.
That's how he
and I
is.
know
Okay.
a lot of people don't like him. I get it. He's a lightning rod. He's not perfect. None of us are. He's made mistakes. I've made mistakes. We all have. But from a human level, I told you before I went to work for them, I didn't like him either. As a candidate, I was against him. I had a lot of my friends were working for him in the primaries up in New Hampshire, for example, and I wanted no part of it because I thought it was, I just didn't like him. And then that day in Pittsburgh, when I was, told get in the limo, he wants to talk to you on the way to the airport. I mean, everything you'd think a young, youthful political candidate would be. He was. He's funny. He's incredibly brilliant. He's down to earth. He respects staff people, and but he also, let's be serious, he shows flashes of anger too if you do something wrong. But he is what you see. I mean, he is, as much as we used to say that Bill Clinton was the first black president.
Right.
He grew up in Arkansas, and the church was so important, and the African American community was so vibrant, and he's a Southerner, and every part of his being came out in his personality. I love the guy. I would walk through fire for him. When I spend time with him, I'm lucky enough to have spent a lot of time with him when he was in office and also afterwards. I cherished it. I haven't seen him though, unfortunately, since 2016, maybe? No. Yeah, 2016. But he's just the greatest. He's the greatest.
Are you able to call him tomorrow if you wanted? Are you?
No, probably not.
Okay.
We all have to go through the office.
You still got to go through it all.
Yeah,
okay.
of course.
Okay. Okay.
So, but he's and again, I'm honest. I get it. He's not perfect. He made some tremendous personal mistakes. But
well, I have to ask this one. Did you know Monica Lewinsky?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I mean, I saw her, in the West Wing every now and then.
Oh, you did see her?
But I
Okay.
left. I left in '97.
Okay. Okay.
July. So I really wasn't around that stuff.
Was that because of a burnout factor, you said, Dennis, or did you have another job, or was it like, I had enough of this, time to move on?
A little bit of it. Yeah, the burnout factor is definitely there. I mean, I'm amazed at people who can stay for 8 years. I really am. It is 24/7 in the White House, and the pressure is pretty incredible. I had a little bit of a burnout. I was exhausted. I mean, I was traveling domestically and foreign and overseas constantly. But my wife and I had just had our first child. And so you have, the tugs of parenthood, and you also have the tugs of being a husband whose wife is also working at the White House. So it seemed like the right time to go. And I took full advantage of that, and was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to go work for the PGA Tour.
Okay. Tell us a bit about that, and then I want to talk about your Afghanistan
Okay,
situation.
sure.
PGA Tour, what was that
Yeah.
about?
Just a tremendous opportunity. Much like you, I'm into sports,
Right.
love sports, grew up surrounded by it, playing sports, in Boston. I know you're a New Jersey guy with New York, and actually you're a Celtics fan from what I understand too.
Yes.
But sports is, it's in your blood, right? So I always, had hoped someday I would be able to work in sports. I had actually thought about for a while, maybe going to getting a graduate degree in sports administration.
Now,
But
does
was
the whole world
presented.
open up for you, Dennis? I mean, you're working in probably the most high-profile job in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
can you basically pick whatever you want at this point? I mean, you got a pretty good resume at age, 31.
Yeah, I mean, it did. I
Yeah.
definitely had opportunities that I was very fortunate to have. Again, it's not. I don't want this to sound like I'm bragging. It's just to give you an idea. At the time I was 31, and I was very fortunate to be interviewed a couple times by David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, and Adam Silver, who's now the commissioner. At one point, I thought I was going to be moving to New York and going
You
to
mean
work for the
recently by Adam Silver or back then?
This was back then.
Oh, he was
Yeah,
back
this was
then too? Okay.
1997. I was interviewed with them.
Okay.
And let me tell you, David Stern, another brilliant guy, unbelievably brilliant. If you ever, something special, if you walk out of a 2-hour interview, and I did that twice with them, you walk out of a 2-hour interview and somebody says, how'd it go? And you say, that was the best interview I've ever had. And it wasn't that I ever did. It was that it was the best interview I ever had. It was fascinating.
I've known a few people that have known David Stern that worked in the NBA, and they
Yeah.
said the exact same thing. They said,
Yeah.
I know when he on the funeral when he passed away, just all the
Yeah.
accolades. And my friend, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Look at what everyone's saying about him.
Yeah, he was brilliant, and another tough guy, very tough.
That's what he
But
said. Yes.
super
Right.
super smart. But I'll tell you, very honest too. I mean, he put me in my place a couple times, or made me understand. Hey, listen, you may be
But he
doing
comes
this
back
now.
right off that, and then he comes back on the positive. I think that's what my friend said.
Absolutely,
Right. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
And he was, he went above and beyond. I mean, again, it was 96 when I first got together with him, and I was his guest. I actually gave myself the assignment to be the lead advance person for the Olympics in Atlanta for the White House. So I was there for about 2.5, 3 weeks.
So you
And
gave yourself the position, being in the White House.
I sacrificed.
Okay.
Somebody had to, right?
Okay. Okay.
So
The
yeah,
perks. Yeah.
I gave myself the assignment, and
Yeah.
the IOC gave me a full access pass to whatever I wanted to do. Yeah, it was good. But David couldn't have been nicer to me. I was his guest at every Dream Team game. Sat with he and Adam Silver and Val Ackerman, who was going to be the commissioner or president of the WNBA. And we were getting to know each other. He was a gentleman and just a brilliant guy. I really admired him. I wish I had the opportunity in the end to go work with him. But I took a different turn. We always take different turns. The funny thing was, I was actually going to Austin, Texas, to go work for a advertising agency run by another brilliant guy, Roy Spence, who was a friend of President Clinton's, and his firm GSD&M in Austin, Texas, one of the best advertising agencies in the country, had basically tendered me an offer to come down there and start their sports business. And so when I was down in Austin with my wife, they were just opening their new headquarters. It happened that Tim Fincham, the commissioner at the time of the PGA Tour, is best friends with Roy, and he introduced me to Commissioner Fincham, and all kinds of crazy things happened. And the next thing I knew, I got back to the White House 2 days later, and there was a call from Commissioner Fincham wanting to know if I could fly down to Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida to meet with him. And before you knew it, I was working for the PGA Tour. So yeah, I mean, it was heady times. It was, I'm incredibly grateful and, humble that these opportunities presented themselves. And I think that's true of a lot of people I worked with, and a lot of people who work in the White House. You make your bones doing that, and you're rewarded a lot of times with opportunity. So,
What did you do exactly, Dennis, at the PGA Tour?
well, when I got there, basically, Tim Finchman basically said, listen, I want you to learn the business of professional golf and professional sports from the ground up. So basically, he put me in, 5 or 6 different departments at the tour, to learn how the tour operated. But as soon as I got there, I was given the assignment to bring to life, his idea, an organization called the First Tee, which is a youth golf development program, that partnered with the PGA of America, the USGA, the LPGA, Shell Oil, Augusta National, basically to grow the game of golf, um, and partner with cities and towns all over the country to build junior golf facilities. Not really junior golf, but youth golf facilities where kids ordinarily wouldn't have the opportunity or the equipment or the facilities to play. So, it was underserved communities was the target. And so that was basically my first assignment as soon as I got there. And we were able to sign up 100 cities in the first year, to build these facilities and run them independently. And the First Tee is a tremendous success today, absolutely tremendous. And again, I was lucky while I was doing that to work with a couple people who were the executive directors at the time of the program. One guy, particular, Joe Barrow. Joe ran the First Tee, probably 10 years or so, maybe more. Another guy out of politics who came to work at the PGA Tour, did a fantastic job growing the game, but also Todd Leiweke. Todd and his brother Tim Leiweke are probably the greatest brother dynamic duo team in professional sports history. Todd has been president of several professional sports teams, and started those teams and or brought them to life. He's got a Stanley Cup or 2 under his belt, Super Bowls, NBA championships, you name it. He's now the CEO of the Seattle NHL team, the Kraken, I guess it's called, up in Seattle. And I learned for a year. He was there for a year, and I learned under him as well. But I also had great people I was working with at the tour, a guy named Mike Starks, who was basically my boss for the First Tee project. I learned an incredible amount about sports and the business at the PGA Tour. And I also, I worked in the communications department. I worked in the commissioner's office. And I also worked on a couple President's Cups, couple in the United States, one in Australia, and then I ran the President's Cup that took place in South Africa in 2003. So learned a lot.
You golf yourself? Are you a golfer?
Used to.
Okay.
I used to play a lot of golf. In the room next door to this one, I have 3 golf bags sitting there collecting dust. My son has turned into a very avid golfer and has been beating me over the head to get out on the course with him. So I'm hoping maybe next spring will be the time I'm able to get back on the course.
Okay. Because of the COVID situation, it's hard to get out, or?
Yeah, that and the weather here.
Okay.
And the,
right.
and the fact that my shoulders hurt, my knees hurt.
Okay. You got to rest them up for the springtime.
Yeah.
Right. Use this as a resting period.
Getting old.
We all are. Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes quick too.
Yep.
Tell us about Afghanistan. I read the article. There was an interesting article about the election there and how you were, I think, overseeing a lot of it, right? Amongst a few other people.
Yeah, I was part of a team of international
Right.
observers.
Right.
You'll find that in any election, usually any election that takes place around the world, including in the United States, there are always independent observers auditing the elections to make sure they're fair, equitable, and that there are no shenanigans. So you can only imagine what that was like for folks monitoring from overseas, monitoring these elections in the United States last time around. But I was very fortunate. I had friends from past lives in Washington and in government that invited me to participate and be an observer for the 2014 presidential recount vote that took place in Afghanistan. you think Afghanistan and an election, and you can only imagine what it's like there, and what had been going on there for years and years. So it was not necessarily the safest thing I ever did in my life, but it was pretty exciting. I was working for a non-government organization over there as part of a team of elected officials and former government entity folks from around the world. Excuse me. To monitor the election process and make sure everything was being done on the up and up. And again, it was an opportunity to do something I'd never done before. I mean, it was in a very hostile country, in a very hostile city.
Was war
You
going
know,
around the outskirts, or was it gunfire, or
Mostly.
mines, or?
Well, there was some of that. I was in Kabul. We all were in Kabul, but we were residing in a hotel in Kabul, one or two different hotels at the time. And then every day we'd have to, twice a day, be transported from the hotel out to the military compound where the election monitoring was taking place. And they were counting the ballots. And you never know what was going to happen. It was, in some ways it was a lot like, a presidential motorcade. You had security with you. You weren't necessarily traveling in, fully safe vehicles, but we were all adorned in flak jackets and helmets, and you knew the risk, and it was always on your mind. There were always things that took place that you'd be standing around and all of a sudden you hear gunfire. You'd hear a bomb go off, a rocket went through one of the buildings on the compound. You never know. You just
Right.
never know what's going to happen. So it was pretty exciting, and to be a part of that. It was, a full recount of the election. It was historic, and it took place. It went very smoothly.
Are the recounts like the recounts here, where you say, okay, we got to recount Georgia? Is it the same kind of process?
No, I mean, back then anyway, 2014 in Afghanistan, it was literally bringing, in some ways, yes. I mean, literally bringing these drums, these plastic containers of ballots, and yes, they sit at a table and every single vote is counted.
This is
And
for
every,
this is
and
for
then you have
A.
to,
This is for B. Just like you go like that.
and
Okay.
you have to look at them, and then they have to consider, is this, excuse me, is this a valid ballot? Why is this whole town voted for one candidate and no votes for the other? The culture is much different. So, I mean, there were a lot of instances when we were recounting these ballots where, the warlords from these towns would basically tell people how they're going to vote.
Right.
You vote this way or you're dead. And we had to take that in consideration. And we had to make decisions based on conversations with election officials there. They made the decisions. We just, we kept reports, and we would approach them if we thought something was odd. Strangely enough, in one of these bins, somebody voted with a shoe.
Okay.
They marked a shoe
Did
with
that
the
count?
candidate's name on it.
And it counted? The shoe?
No, it did not count.
Oh,
But
because you had to
tried
do
vote.
okay.
Yeah, they
Right.
tried to vote. There were a lot of things that were, very strange. But every vote was looked at. Every official record was taken, and it was a negotiated settlement at the end. So
So at
but it
the
was great.
end, it was as fair as it could be. It probably sounds not perfect with these things, but it
I
was.
think it was at the time the most fair election that ever took place in Afghanistan, the most organized and fair election. And various sides and entities tried to upset that, and change the results. But in the end, I think it was done pretty fair. It was crazy though. I mean, and from an American's perspective, the things that were done were just, like I said, with a shoe, or people being forced to vote one way, or fingerprints on ballots were all the same fingerprint.
Okay.
There's a lot of that. So
The are the elections You have to wonder about it, even here with the machines. I always wondered through my whole life that how do you know
Yeah.
these machines are calculating this thing correctly? You just kind of wonder. It just seems like it's a computer thing. It seems like it's easy to manipulate it, but are they safe? It seems like they are.
I think they are here in the United States. Yeah,
Yes.
I absolutely think they are.
Uh-huh.
And again, you have to look at it from different perspectives. But I mean, if there are some people in this last presidential election who say, oh, the ballots were manipulated and there was fraud in the presidential. Well, then how come those votes weren't changed for the Senate campaigns, for the Senate races? Why would they only do it for the presidential? Why wouldn't they? We wouldn't end up with a situation where we're fighting in Georgia right now. They would have taken care of Georgia as well, right? But they didn't. I have I have complete faith in our election system here. There are so many stopgaps. There are so many checks applied to the process. There are so many good people working hands-on in these elections, but also in the election offices to make sure that everything is done right. There's pretty much full transparency. I think what we have here this time is just, a bunch of people who don't like the outcome, who have for months before the election even took place, have been setting the stage for these protests and for deniability and looking, making a case before anything ever happened because they knew probably what the result was going to be. There are people who said, when I won, it was the greatest election that ever took place, the most fair election, and I won fair and square. And then 4 years later, they're saying, oh, this was the most rigged election. Our election system is horrible and it's terrible. Why? Well, because they lost.
Okay. Actually,
I think it's terrible. I think
it
it's
was
terrible.
stated that Afghanistan is even better than this one, I think. Wasn't it? Was that the country I
Well,
think I heard?
maybe. I have great faith in our election system here. I really do. And I have faith in the American people. We're definitely a divided country right now. There's no doubt about it. But one can only hope that things, resolve themselves and people, come together. And maybe, there's going to be a cooling off period, hopefully, in the next few months. Yeah, it's time to move on and up. I think we've been through a very difficult 4 years. And it's going to be nice to get back to some semblance of order and normalcy.
What do you think, Dennis, of the electoral college? I always wonder why isn't it just? I hear that
Yeah.
I don't know if it's false or not. Well, the cities, you don't want the cities dominating the vote. You have to spread it out. I mean, whoever wins wins. Like, what do you
Yeah.
think of the way? I'm
Personally,
surprised at how it is now that I'm finding out the inner workings of how the electoral college. You got to certify them. You got to have this.
yeah.
It's pretty wild. I never realized all that. What do you think of it?
Personally, I don't like it. I wish we would get rid of it.
Mhm.
I think it only stands in the way and is a cause of great confusion and also allows people to come up with conspiracy theories. And I don't think it serves. It's like anything. It's like people say, oh, well, the Constitution says this and yeah, blah, blah, blah. Well, these are living, breathing documents, just as our democracy is. And I think something that was set up back then was set up for certain reasons. But you know what? Now that's different and we need to adjust it. I don't think the Electoral College serves the American people as a system, serves the American people in a good way. I think it's time to get rid of it and go to just straight popular vote. Yeah, that's just my personal opinion.
Do you think they'll get there at some point with the straight vote, or is
I
that
don't
hard to
know.
do?
I mean, it's so hard. I bang my head against the wall sometimes thinking, yeah, we're all saying that now. Why? Because those who believe what I believe are saying it because, it almost upended or potentially still could upend the actual, positive result the way I wanted it. Those you know, who lost are saying, oh, the electoral college is there, so we can do this, this, and this. Well, that may be true, but so it's going to be a shifting tide always. It's going to be somebody's going to hate it and somebody's going to like it. And until you have a United States Senate and House of Representatives that can work together, and that's maybe a little bit more balanced, or one party's in more power in the Senate and House, that they can say, yeah, the system's antiquated and we need to get rid of it. I hate to say, I think it's probably here for a while.
And
So
there's been some flaws exposed, it sounds,
yeah,
on this thing.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the history, there are a couple reasons why it was established. One, you said, to make it more equitable for states that have fewer people or are representative in rural districts rather than cities. Um, it's to balance out representation with population. But it also goes back to the Civil War times and slavery. And so I think it would be a great service to this country. I think if a board were established to study the Electoral College and come out with a recommendation, and that board would have to be comprised of Democrats, Republicans, elect educators, historians, presidential historians. Put a real judicial folks together, put a real body to study the system and make a recommendation to the federal government.
Where are we now, Dennis? And then I want to move on. I want to talk about some fun stuff that we spoke
Okay.
about before with sports and some music. Where is it now? I mean, in the past, after November 4th, wherever the day was, it was it. Then it was all just automatic. Okay.
Yep.
And then now it seems like there's still uncertainty. Wait till January 6th, or what's going to happen then, or the Senate might
Yeah.
vote. Like where is this right now? If you could tell us. I
Sure.
mean, it's
Well,
so
I think,
confusing for a lot of people.
yeah, I mean, I think we're where we are. It used to be automatic because we lived in a country where people felt good about the electoral process, and a winner was declared and people abided by the results of the election, and the next step was always taken. It wasn't always, as wildly public as it is now. But the process has been the same. The election takes place, the electoral winner is declared the victor, and then it gets brought to the electors and the state delegations, and then it goes to Congress to verify it. It's always been like that, but there's never been this vitriol. There's never been this, um, you know, the election is a fraud, it's a fake, my side lost, people cheated. It's a recent, phenomenon, if you will. Um, and personally, I think it's destructive. I think it's based on a lot of conspiracy theories. It's based on certain people not liking the outcome of the election. And let's put it this way: this whole 4-year term, this administration is going to be studied in colleges and universities for years and years to come. How this happened, what happened to our system, why were people like this? Um, you could go on, you could do a whole 2-hour podcast on this election.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but I do think, the system as we have it, it's democracy first and foremost. It's representative of the people's will. And if we start messing with that, we are going to lose our democracy or our republic. So,
Is it? I mean, is President-elect Biden going to be in on January 20th, or is there still uncertainty? Or I mean, is there always that 1% that we don't really know now? Or I mean, can you
okay,
count on that system is going to carry through like it always has? Or
you're asking me to put on my partisan hat. I honestly believe that President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris will be sworn in on January 20th.
okay,
I think from today onward to that day and even after, that the current president and representatives of his administration, as well as a number of his supporters, are going to make it as difficult as possible to get to that point on January 20th. And then after that point, are going to continue to do that. They're going to continue
okay,
to disrupt the system, to continue to foment opposition, and continue to try and keep conspiracy theories alive. Throughout this whole process, though, there's one thing that's remained constant. None of the allegations that they've made have been proven to be true, nor have they provided any evidence, none whatsoever, to support their claims. So you have to ask yourself why. Why are we doing this? Why are we allowing this to happen? the courts have basically said enough is enough. This is ridiculous. You're wrong. Even the Supreme Court, with the balance of power in the current administration's favor, has said enough. We're done. You're wrong. You haven't done anything to provide evidence in any way, shape, or form. So that's where we are. We have a group of people who are trying to upset the federal government, to be honest with you, and the system, and it's destructive. So I'm hopeful that January 6th, or that week of, we're going to get through that, and then we're going to go on to the inauguration on the 20th, and we're going to start fresh again, and America will return to its greatness. So
okay.
we'll see.
Well, let's talk about greatness in sports. I want to run a few. We were talking earlier. I'm a huge sports fan. I love talking sports. I could do a 50-hour podcast on that probably.
Me too.
Let's. I mean, we're not going to spend 50 hours. We'll spend a little bit of time. I'd like to know your feelings on the three major sports. First, what do you think of basketball now? The way it's played with the stopping for the 3-point shots, the high scoring, and compared to the way it was more of a team game, it seemed. Pick and rolls, 10-foot jump shot off the screen. What do you think of the game now?
Okay, this is where I'm an old man. Okay, it's a completely different game. I think a lot, any sport that we talk about is a completely different game than when you and I were kids. I'm not as big a fan of the game right now as I was when I was growing up. You and I talked previously, and I shared with you, you're a Celtics fan also. I grew up watching, Dave Cowens, John Havlicek, Casey Jones. I'm staring right now above my screen here, poster from the 1980, actually it's a light beer commercial series they did with Heinsohn, Casey Jones, Red Auerbach, and Sam Jones. But I go a little bit later, Don Nelson, those guys. It was fast break basketball in the 80s with Bird and those guys, and the magic of the Lakers. To me, that was, great basketball. I'm not as big a fan now of the game. I think it's changed so much. My son put it best a long time ago. One of the other things, I asked him who his favorite team was. He always was, with me, a Celtics fan. And he said, Dad, we're not, my generation, we don't really care about what team. It's all about the players. And I think that's true. It's become a player's game. Kids don't, they root for individual players now. They don't necessarily root for teams.
My son's a LeBron James fan. I said, Are you a Laker fan now? He goes, No, I'm a LeBron James fan. Just like you just said. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, I'm that NBA fan that watches the last 5 minutes of the game.
Right.
Even if it's a playoff game. The bang, bang, 3 points here, kind of the ridiculousness of the fouls, the officiating. I don't know. I have to tell you though, I loved watching the games in the bubble. I thought that was so much fun. No fans. It compartmentalized the playing surface, and it just seemed old school to me. Even if it wasn't, it seemed that way.
Right.
I loved it.
Yeah. Give me your all-time team.
Oh my gosh, forget that. I'm so bad at this. I wish my son Frederick were here right now. He could help.
Who's your center?
Bill Russell, but I'll get slammed for that.
Well, it's either him, Chamberlain, I guess Kareem, but
Will Chamberlain, Kareem, and Bill Russell. I got to say, obviously, I'm a huge Larry Bird fan. I'm an 80s era Celtics guy, but God, you can name them all. Pistol Pete Maravich. I mean, Oscar Robertson. We talked about Kareem already. Bill Russell. There's Will Chamberlain changed the game. Who else? I don't know. There's so many.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're going with Russell because of the championship factor and the win.
Yeah, the championship factor, but just also because of what a personality he was with the Celtics in a leadership position in Boston at a time when, he had more to deal with just playing basketball. The fact that he then went on to be the first African-American coach in the NBA, the outspoken political views he had and was not afraid to share. From a human perspective, I think he's an amazing human being. And one thing that always stuck with me was he, everybody used to say to him, how come you don't sign my autograph? Or how come you won't sign my autograph? And he finally came out a number of years ago. It's probably 10 years ago. He said, you know what? My deal always was, signing a piece of paper to my name. I mean, I would rather shake your hand and talk to you and learn who you are and you me than sign an autograph. And that's
Right.
what he did for so long. He now, of course, at the urging of his daughter, signs autographs, which is great too. But he's just such an amazing human being. So
I
I'm
agree.
biased, completely biased.
I agree. I agree. No, I think that might be just a good
But
unbiased
Magic,
opinion. So yeah.
I mean, Magic Johnson and Larry, they changed the game, saved the game.
Yeah.
Um,
Scary, right? The talent level. Michael Jordan.
oh yeah, how can I forget? I
Yeah,
mean, Michael
yeah,
Jordan.
yeah, yeah.
God, what an amazing documentary that was too.
It was.
Just
Yeah. It
amazing.
came at a good time too during the
Yeah.
lockdown,
Yeah.
Baseball. What do you think, Dennis, of the analytics in the game now?
Wow, that's a big one. Billy Beane changed the game in his own way too. Theo Epstein and the guys with the Red Sox followed suit, and then he took it on the road as well. Does it work? Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said, and a lot that points to analytics is helping change the game and help teams develop better, more balanced teams. If you read the book Moneyball, you get the insight into it, or if you hear interviews with what's his name with the Red Sox, Bill. Why am I spacing? I can't remember. He used to advise the Red Sox on analytics as well. But anyway, there's a lot to be said for that. I don't think it hurts the game. I'd be interested to hear somebody's perspective that says, analytics has ruined the game. I think it's helped a lot.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I know there is that point of view of the old school,
Bill James, by the way. Sorry, Bill James.
Bill James.
I was trying to think of Bill James. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Of the old school guys that think that, the old, putting a bunt down or, going with gut feel,
Yeah.
leaving the pitcher in after 6-7 innings because he's, starting to gain his momentum. There is that kind of perspective.
Yeah.
Not a lot of that, but there is some people that like that,
The game has changed. It's like we were talking a minute ago.
Yeah.
Like basketball, like any sport, the game has changed so much. Baseball, and I think, they're feeling difficulty and pressure now because I think they're losing their audience and they're losing youth participation in the game because it's changed so much. I wish there was a lot more excitement in baseball. I think it's lost a certain degree of excitement. Didn't they just outlaw the shift?
I believe so. Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yeah. Right. You got the juice balls,
the steroid era. I have to say, I'm completely and totally against, the steroid era and the guys who benefited from it, just because they could say, oh, well, everybody was doing it. Yeah. Well, there were a lot more guys who weren't doing it.
So no Hall of Fame for them, for the steroid guys, including Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens.
This is such an unpopular opinion. No.
Okay. Okay.
But Andy Pettit, same thing. These guys who used and did their mea culpas. I don't think they should be. Pete Rose, funny enough.
That was my next question.
I think Pete Rose deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he broke the rule, the golden rule of baseball, and he gambled on his team, and he gambled against, and he lied. Yeah, but should he be in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, I think he should. Babe Ruth was a total jerk, and Ty Cobb was a jerk, and they violated rules of the game and other things. But I don't know. It's I admit it, completely unpopular. But how can you deny what he did on the field?
Right. Right.
So,
4,000 hits. Right.
Yeah. Amazing accomplishments.
Could Babe Ruth play today?
Do you ever wonder that? I mean, I always look at.
I have great arguments with my friends on that. Yes.
Yeah. What do you think?
Me? I believe he would adjust, and I say he would. I go with the great players is a great player, and if you go by the lineage, he played with Gehrig played with DiMaggio. They're in the same era, unless it's so subtle of a change. Better, they were in the same era. DiMaggio with Mantle, and now you're with Mays in the modern era. And I know Mays could play now, so you could kind of go back to they kind of were in there with each other all the way down.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good argument that they could,
Yeah.
because they played with each other. Like, when did it change then?
Yeah. I
What
always
do you
have
think?
these discussions. I used to anyway with my son about, basketball or any sport.
Right.
Oh, with this person, how can you not consider this person? And I always said, well, it's a different era, different generation, different game. How do you compare? How can you say that Babe Ruth would have been, the greatest home run hitter now, or who would have done? And I always look at the old footage of, the black and white footage from the 40s and 50s of baseball, and I always wonder to myself, were the pitchers throwing as hard then as they are now? Um, you know, was it easier to play the game back then?
I think they were not throwing it as hard back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
hard a pitcher, was Babe Ruth to face?
Well, that's what
Yeah.
my friend would have the argument that there's no way Babe Ruth could play now, because if you transport him from 1924 to now, he wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to get around on the fastball. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a little unfair though, because he wouldn't be using the heavy bat, and he'd have the nutrition now, and
Yeah. I
the
think probably,
travel's better now.
yeah. And
You
I
know,
think probably the 60s maybe was a start where guys were like really like pitchers changed the game. We're throwing harder, faster, we're more intimidating. The Bob Gibsons of the world and Sandy Koufax, and but again, it's like we've talked about before too. It's different eras of baseball.
right, right.
You had the pitchers era, you had the hitters era. The designated hitter. How has that changed the game? Do we need to get rid of the DH? You know, artificial turf.
Right, right, right. Well, I guess it's like basketball. Could Elgin Baylor play now? I mean,
Yeah.
every generation they
Yeah.
learned, like they dribbled different back in the 50s or
Yep.
60s or 70s. The whole dribbling was different, so they wouldn't have
Yep.
those moves, but they learned it each time before.
There's no fast break anymore, is there?
No,
Well,
they stopped right before the
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Game's totally changed, and guys are so much faster now. And athletes, it's like in golf. We have that argument. Jack Nicklaus, Tiger, and Arnold, and all those guys. And yeah, well, the equipment's much different. They're much more physically fit. Yeah, they travel by private jet. Yes, they play more events. I don't know. I always try and tell my son, yeah, you can't compare. It's too hard to compare.
I go
You
along
just
with
have to
that.
appreciate.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun to argue, but it's like Jim
Yeah.
Brown. Would he be able to be the same
Oh,
powerhouse now with the
I kind
bigger?
of think he would.
He
I
probably
kinda-
would. Yeah,
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 that guy,
yeah,
amazing. I mean,
yeah.
his personal issues aside too, that guy was a all-American lacrosse player in college.
Right.
Amazing football player. Yeah, I think he could definitely compete.
He would be able to do it. Right.
I
Right.
think he would have kept himself in the greatest physical condition, and he would have made sure that he was the best on the field.
What do you think of football? And then I want to talk music, and we'll wrap it up with
Okay.
my word association.
I can't believe you're not talking hockey.
Let's talk hockey. Let's do hockey. You're a hockey fan? You're from New England.
Yeah.
You must be. Okay.
Yeah. No, I played hockey as a kid and through high school and college. And
I got a question though for you, and this is I got a friend that played on the Devils. He
Yeah.
was the first New Jersey guy to play hockey from New
Sweet.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Nice guy, and he's probably watching this. But I asked him, I go, why can't they go more than 50 seconds on a shift? Because I had Paul Westhead on last week,
Yeah.
and he had the speedball basketball, where it's like fast break. And I checked it; it's every 4 seconds they did shoot when he was in the
Yeah.
college with Hank Gathers,
Yeah.
and then full court press the other way. He says you can go 8 or 10 minutes that way. He goes,
Yeah.
it's a psychological mindset in hockey that they just feel they got to come out in a minute. What do you think?
Well, I was always taught when you're a kid, you're taught, you want to go 100% of the time you're on the ice.
Right.
And you want to be out there for a maximum, 90 seconds and get off the ice and let a guy who's better rested with fresh legs get out there. And it's a game of attrition in a way. You want to match up if you want to be more fresh than the guys that are out there. So it's not that you couldn't. I mean, God, you find yourself, ask anybody who's ever played, you find yourself stuck on the ice for 2 minutes and more sometimes because you can't get off. and you're hurting, you're huffing and puffing. You always want to be fresh, fast, and and get the next guys out there who are well rested and ready to go. And I think that's just a philosophy. It's not that you can't, but that if you're smart and you want to win and you want to match up better, get fresh legs out there every 90 seconds.
Okay.
And you'll find your play. As a player, you're going to be much better at the end of the game if you do that than if you're playing 2-3 minute shifts. And all the mistakes happen. It's like any game. All the mistakes and all the giveaways happen when you're tired.
Okay. Right. And it seems like in hockey, I didn't play. Did you play hockey, Dennis?
Yeah, I played hockey my whole life.
Okay.
Really.
Is the key to it is just shooting it on goal and then getting a rebound and just being around there and just slapping it through?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
I mean, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that's one. Like when I was growing up, it used to be called dump and chase.
Okay.
You get the puck, you pass it to one guy, you get over the center ice line, and you dump it in the corner, and then you go fight for it. Yeah, that's old school hockey. Today it's a much different game. I mean, as much as there are, highly thought out and technical plays in football and basketball, the same is true in hockey. It's not just, flinging the puck up against the wall and chasing it down and getting it out front and hoping somebody's going to bat it in. It really isn't. If you watch a face-off from the start of the game, everybody has a role. Everybody has an assignment, a pattern that they're going to run. On face-offs, there are plays, designated plays that run. It's not just, okay, we need to win the face-off and get the puck back. Everybody has a position that they're to be in. Yeah, you want to win the face-off, but when you get the puck, this guy knows he needs to then go here, this guy goes there. I mean, it's all very intricate. So the game, again, just like any other game, has developed these systems. So yeah, it's something to watch, next time you see a game.
Okay.
Watch how the plays formulate.
Is hockey better now than it was, or has it changed like all the sports from 20, 30? I know it was more physical, no fights now and all that.
Better? I don't know. Has it changed? Yes. I always say the best hockey in this order, I think, is Olympic hockey, followed by the NCAA tournament, college hockey, the Frozen Four, or the tournament itself, followed by NHL playoff hockey, followed by college regular season hockey. Has it changed? Yeah. If you look at the game when you and I were kids again, we used to go to the Boston Garden and see the Bruins, did they have, video equipment? No. Were there guys up in the booth tracking all the plays and players and shifts and who was out on the ice at the time? No. Did they have literal video rooms in the locker room underneath the stands? In between periods, coaches would go in and analyze the footage and figure out who's doing what. It's just like football. It's an incredibly technical game now, and then you've got, when a guy would get a stick in the mouth in the old days,
right,
and lose a tooth, they'd spit it out and go on. Now they go underneath. There's a dentist on staff. A friend of mine's husband, in fact, you mentioned the Devils, is the team dentist for the Devils. He did all the games, and if a guy gets cut, he's stitching them up, pulling teeth. Guys have training. Back in the days of the big bad Bruins, training was flying to California for a game against the Golden Seals. Wayne Cashman taking scissors to his suit pants, and cutting it off, and them going to the beach for a few hours before the game. Now it's get your rest, eat your protein, start doing your team stretching exercises, kick around the hacky sack in the hallway, the soccer ball. It's so different now. I still love hockey, still love watching it.
Right.
Great stuff.
Right. And I hear none of them have their teeth. That's what my friend says. Everyone has no teeth in hockey.
Not true.
It's not true.
Not true.
Okay. No, but I said if he has teeth, he did not have teeth. Those are your real teeth? Yeah?
Yeah, these are my teeth.
Oh, okay.
This one got crooked. I got to stick to the mouth.
Okay.
But no, a lot of guys have their teeth, but a lot of guys definitely have had teeth knocked out.
Okay.
No doubt about it.
Okay. I was a big Bobby Orr fan growing up in the 70s. You had to love him, right? Phil Esposito.
Me too.
Those guys. Yeah. big
my idol.
the Ranger
Yeah.
rivalry, right? That was the big rivalry
I used
back then.
Yeah, and my Bruin fans buddies would harp on me all the time. I loved watching, I used to say it's the Boston Bruins and the New York Rangers at Madison Square Garden. I used to love the Boston Garden, being from there, but there was something special about a Sunday afternoon matinee game at Madison Square Garden, the Bruins Rangers.
Right.
Loved it. I used to
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
watching that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jean Rattel, with the Rangers, Jean Rattel, Brad Park, that era, Eddie Jacquemin, and the Big Bad Bruins. Great games. Yeah, terrific.
I got his autograph in 1970, my first baseball game. He was sitting in front of me about I didn't even know who he was, but everybody was getting his autograph. He had the mask
Oh my
on,
God, yeah.
and I saw his
Yep,
autograph. Oh, it's
that's
Eddie
funny.
Jacquemin there. He looked like a regular guy.
Yep.
The
Yep.
And the Olympics, right? That's the best moment in sports when the U.S. beat Russia.
Well, I'm going to flip this for a second.
Yeah.
As you can see behind me, it's all golf stuff, pretty much. But let me see if you can see this stuff.
Yes. Okay. Ah. Wow.
So
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. Sorry to do that.
That's great.
I was very fortunate as a 15-year-old kid, 14-year-old, 15-year-old to be at the USSR game, the Miracle game.
You were at the game? Yeah.
My dad. Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, on the wall there's a picture that my brother took.
Wow.
With my ticket I have framed underneath it, and we had dinner with Mike Eruzione that summer. And again, a 15-year-old hockey player kid having dinner with Mike Eruzione, the captain of the gold medal team.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I was so lucky. My dad was able to get us tickets for a game. We were going to the Olympics, and he said, what do you want to see? And I, of course, said hockey. Anyway, he got tickets for a few events, and one of them was a medal round game. At the time, you don't know what game it's going to be. It's a medal round. And as things developed, of course, it turned into the US-Russia game. And we were there. It was unbelievable. Yeah, very lucky.
Was it as loud as it seemed in there? I mean, it seemed like it was crazy. Or was it this a normal type loud? Yeah. Okay.
No, it was crazy. I mean, even between periods, it was absolutely insane. I remember, the level of noise. It was a big party between periods. It was awesome.
Huh. Interesting.
Just an amazing experience.
My wife visited Lake Placid years after that, and she went into that stadium, and she said you could still hear the crowd. There was something. I guess it's psychological. You could still feel it in there.
Yeah, I would love to go back and just be in that building again. I remember where we were sitting. I remember everything about that day. I remember there was a big controversy before the game, in the days leading up to that game, because they were going to switch the game because the US-Russia game was at 5:00 local time, and ABC wanted it to be prime time.
Right, it wasn't live.
So we were sweating.
Right,
we were sweating it out that they were going to switch the game on us, and we were going to get the Finland whatever game. And thank goodness the IOC held its stance and said no, they'll be played as they are scheduled. So yeah.
Yeah, I still get chills, when I see the movie, The Miracle on Ice, or whatever that movie was. Was that pretty accurate? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Miracle, to some degree. I mean, I remember I'm getting goosebumps right now, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
From the game stuff, the game stuff was pretty accurate. The behind the scenes stories, come to be, I guess well known, but I guess it was probably pretty accurate.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's
very cool. Yeah.
I watch the highlights sometimes on Eruziane's goal on YouTube, just to get fired up, when he hit the goal.
I think the quote.
Yeah.
One of his friends at home, he's from Winthrop, Mass. Blue collar working class town right outside of Boston, and one of his friends said to him, an inch more to the right, and you would have been painting bridges for the rest of your life.
Right. Yeah. Right. Isn't it amazing?
But instead, it went in.
And he's probably still making a living off that, probably somehow, I guess.
Yeah, God bless him. He is. He works for Boston University. raises money for the athletic department. He does some time with ABC Sports and, you know, publicity speaking tour and stuff. Yeah, he does well. He's a good guy.
Let's segue into music, and then we'll wrap it up. Dennis, appreciate your time here. This is great.
Sure. Sure.
The
Hope I'm not boring you.
No, this is exciting stuff. This is my wheelhouse. All this, so this is good, and my listeners too. I want to talk about two groups. You mentioned them before when we were talking on the phone. I'll start with the Grateful Dead. What's the mystique with them? I mean, they got no like real number ones. I mean, I know they're a live band. Everyone goes there. You know, went there, taped all the songs. They got, you know, my brother was a big Deadhead fan. He had like 10,000 concerts you listened to. What's the appeal to that?
Yeah.
If you could explain the phenomenon.
God, you could go in 10 different directions. I think personally, with me, I had an older brother. I still do. My oldest brother is a big Deadhead, and he and I still go to Dead and Company shows together to this day. But he got me interested in the Grateful Dead. I used to, you know, when he would drive me to school in the morning, when he was in high school, and then college weekends at his school, sitting in his car, listening to the music all the time. There was something, first of all, fun about it for me. You know, I guess it's an acquired taste is the best way to put it. But I was immediately taken in by just, you know, the fun aspect of it. It just seemed like, you know, at concerts and things, people were just there dancing, and it didn't matter what, you know, in one of the songs, of course, it says, you know, it doesn't matter what you wear, just as long as you were there. It didn't matter what you wore, who your friends were, anything like that. You were there to kind of just have a good time, enjoy the music, no judgments, nothing like that. And so I was attracted to it. There's some kind of cultural aspect to it too. You know, a lot of it, you know, Jerry Garcia used to kid that, you know, at the time, you know, previous years and decades before, kids would hop on the train tracks and go run away and go tour with the circus. And that's what the Grateful Dead were in the 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, it was that lifestyle. It was an opportunity to get out of wherever you were and go live that lifestyle and be free. There was some of that to it. This is a strange one, I admit, tangent. I'm Jewish, and there's a lot of similarities between a traditional Jewish service, religious service, and the Grateful Dead music and message and vibe at a show. And the way people dance and move, very similar. I think, you know, if you ask, you know, any Jew who likes the Grateful Dead, they would probably tell you the same thing. It's like, it's like going to synagogue or something. It all comes down to the music in my mind, but you know, I love the music. So that's where
have you ever met them at all, or Jerry Garcia
yeah, very lucky.
You have?
Very lucky. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
By what we spoke about, what you did, you know, for a living, I figured you'd probably meet almost anybody, but I knew you'd probably get into their window, you know.
Well, here where the worlds collide. Two places. One, my cousin, I think he's my first or second cousin once removed, was a guy named Richard Alpert, also known as Baba Ram Das, or Ram Das. He just passed away last year.
Ram Das is the Ram Das that I've heard of. Ram Das. He's a known famous person, right?
Be Here Now, Ram Das. Yes.
Ram Das. Okay.
Yeah.
He's your cousin?
Ram Dass is a cousin. You know, he and Timothy Leary were Harvard professors.
Now he's older, right? He would be older than you, Ram Dass.
Oh, much older. Yeah. I mean, he just passed away. I think he was in his late 80s, maybe. Or 90.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And you know, again, I was a big history guy and social movement, kind of interested in all those studies. And, you know, I remember coming across his name at one point and my mother telling me he's the black sheep of the family, which I thought was kind of funny.
That's funny.
Brilliant. Another brilliant guy, you know, from Massachusetts originally. His father, George, was the head of the New York, New Haven Railroad. You know, my grandfather, George, were cousins. So, he's, I guess, my second cousin once removed or something like that. But I became very interested in who he was and what he was, and because of my interest in the Dead, and he
Right.
was involved with the, of course, counterculture and the Grateful Dead and all this stuff. I got together with him in New York City one day at my request. I wanted to meet him, and had the greatest day. Just, one of the things when we finally kind of sat down to talk, he said to me, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to get to know everything about you and who you are. And he said, who do you want to talk to? Richard Alpert or Ram Dass? And I said,
Oh, wow.
I want to talk to my cousin. Yeah. And I said, I want to talk to my cousin Richard, but I'm
Right.
happy to talk to Ram Dass. And then we just spent
So he was like 2
8
different people. He was
Well, not
two.
really. I mean,
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think he was more curious, like, is this kid interested in me because he's a deadhead and he just wants to talk, or does he
Okay.
really want to know his cousin?
Okay.
And I really wanted to know my cousin. I wanted to know
Right.
his story.
Right.
So we spent about 8 hours together in New York and just talked, and it was great. Just, he told me history of, he and Leary and Harvard and the counterculture. And he told me stories from, Be Here Now and experience he had had, and all kinds of stuff. And we talked about the counterculture and the Dead and about me. It was just fun. It was great. So you've got Ram Dass there. And I remember going to see him a couple times speak in Washington, D.C. when he was there, when I was working in the White House, which was great. But when I was in college, and this is where worlds collide, when I was in college, my best friend, a guy named Dan Rosenthal, who I'm still great friends with, we used to sit on the steps at one of the buildings at school, a fraternity house, and we used to tour together to see the Dead all the time. We used to say, yeah, if we ever get to the White House, we're going to invite the Grateful Dead to play the South Lawn. Well, I hung on to that. So when, first of all, during the campaign, the 92 campaign, I took a Steal Your Face sticker about that big, and I put it on the window of our campaign plane next to the staircase, so that every time the staircase was brought up to the plane, you'd have Clinton Gore on one side, and the other you'd see the Grateful Dead sticker. And so Gore would get up there and he'd wave, and there's a Grateful Dead sticker in every picture like that. So that was kind of my mark that I left, Grateful Dead wise. And then at one point we had John Perry Barlow, who was writing partner of Bob Weir with the Grateful Dead. I gave him, put him on the manifest for a trip on Air Force Two. That was a fun experience. He and Vice President Gore had some great conversations. And the thing I was going to tell you is my first official act when I got to the White House, I called up Grateful Dead offices and asked for Dennis McNally, who was the Grateful Dead's historian and publicist at the time, and told him who I was and that we had met at a concert a couple of years before, and that I was calling from the White House and I wanted to invite the group to come to the White House and spend the day. And the next thing I heard was, he hung up on me. He thought I was kidding.
Uh-huh.
So I got a White House operator to place the call for me. They got him on the line and said, Mr. McNally, this is the White House switchboard. We have Mr. Alpert on the line for you. Will you take the call? We got on. He said, I thought you were kidding. Anyway, Dennis and I became friends. We've been friends ever since. I invited the Grateful Dead to the White House in 1993. So March 16th, I think it was March 15th or 16th of 1993, Jerry and Phil Lesh and Mickey Hart and a bunch of, and Jerry's ex-wife, Mountain Girl, and Phil's wife and Mickey's wife and a few staff people all came over to the White House, and we spent the day together. It was unbelievable. So the dream came true.
Wow. So you're hanging out with Jerry.
Yeah, that's how I got to know them. Jerry was, another guy, another brilliant guy. And maybe another thing that attracted me to them. Jerry Garcia was a brilliant guy. Phil Lesh is a genius. Bob Weir an amazing guy also, incredibly creative thinker. All these guys, they're no dummies. And they all knew the amazing thing. We did a tour of the White House residence, and they knew, those three guys, they knew the history of each room. They knew the history of each piece of artwork on the wall.
Hmm.
Jerry took his hand up to, some of the fireplace mantles or statues to feel them, to feel what they felt like. And,
Yeah.
they they were amazing to watch. My brother and I, and my friend Dan, we just sat back and watched them. Like, we didn't want to ruin it, you
Right.
know.
Right.
We
Right.
just watched what they did. It was great. Phil Lesh got on the piano in the north portico of the White House. That was from the 1800s, late 1700s actually. Um, just craziness. So
Did you
yeah.
get their autographs at all? Or
Did I? Yeah, I did later on. I didn't that
okay.
day. I
Okay.
didn't. I mean, we took one picture. I can show you if you're interested. I have it in the
If you
next
have it,
room.
yeah.
You know, we didn't want to be. We didn't want to be those
Right. Right.
guys.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah,
But so you kept in touch with the dead after that then? I know Jerry passed away a little bit
yeah,
after that. Okay.
yeah. We
Okay.
kept in touch with them, and they did an event at the Library of Congress, and we saw Jerry and the guys there, and we went to any number of shows as guests of the band all over the country.
Hmm.
They couldn't have been nicer to us. They sent us or sent me tapes, boxes of tapes that I still have with notes in them, and shared them with
Wow.
everybody.
Holy smokes. Wow.
Yeah, we went out to California, and we'd include them in events we did.
Wow.
It was great. And, yeah, it was fun. So, and we
Um,
still see them. Still see them at Dead and Company
okay.
shows.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But once Jerry was gone, that was it, right? I know.
Well, with the great. Well, what do you mean? Sorry.
I know they still toured, right? I mean, there was a name they went
Yeah.
under, but I'm sure it was never the
Yeah.
same again. Yeah.
No, you know what though? More recently now though, with the Dead and Company, which is Bob Weir, Mickey Hart, Bill Kreutzmann, the three original members, plus John Mayer on guitar, and a couple other players also. It's the closest. Whereas my
Right.
brother likes to say, it's the best all-time Dead tribute band there is.
Yeah. Right. Right.
It was much different when Jerry was with the band, of course. So,
Right. I was there a few
yeah.
times, and when they hit that pocket for like those songs, for like 30 minutes, they keep the same, and you definitely get into a zone. I was telling my brother, I go, wow,
Oh yeah.
I think I'm getting this. I mean, then you kind
Yep.
of anticipate the music where it's going. It is a pretty wild scene.
Yep.
Your experience
Yep.
like that would be like mine if I had that with the Beatles, because that's my group. Let me hear, and then we'll wrap it up. Those two groups seem like the most iconic type groups: the Grateful Dead and the Beatles, because they're just the Beatles. Give me your interpretation of what the Beatles were all about, as
Wow.
broad as that
They
is.
went.
I want to hear
Yeah.
go on about the Beatles.
Sadly, I miss them. I was born in '65.
Okay.
So, before I was even able to understand who they were gone.
Right.
But
Right.
they lived on. My mother was huge into the Beatles, and I think she got me turned on to the Beatles as a kid. But I mean, how many bands go through that many genres, if you will, in such a short period of time? They, of course, we know the history. They changed the music industry. They changed music. Um, and they went through so many different personality stages as a group. Um, on Sirius XM, my Beatles channel is on practically every day.
Right.
They were geniuses. I have friends who were into the Rolling Stones who hate the Beatles. And I'm like, how can you hate the Beatles? I mean, listen, the lyrics, the music, they were, cutting edge, George Martin, they were unbelievable. How can you, I love them to this day. Love
Is
them.
that just a once in a
So,
billion thing? The timing, the whole thing, right?
it's gotta be.
That'll never happen again.
Well, how many times have you heard, or I can tell you how many times I've heard, oh, that person's the next Tom Brady. There's never going to be another Tom Brady. Oh, they're, the Knack or the next Beatles. No, they're not. They weren't. They were a flash in the pan.
Right.
U2 is the next beat. No, they're U2. No, I don't think there's ever going to be anything like the Beatles again. And I can't wait until next summer to see the new documentary. I can't
Right.
wait.
Yeah. To Let It Be.
All the footage.
Yeah.
It's gonna be awesome.
They released a 5-minute version of it. I don't know if you saw it about a week ago. It's out.
did.
It's out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, amazing.
Yeah. You could actually.
And I don't know if you had to hear. Yeah.
Pardon?
Do you ever listen to Howard Stern show? Do you ever listen to the Howard Stern show?
Only when he has guests I like on, I'll listen to a few minutes of it. Yeah.
Every Paul McCartney interview.
Yeah, I listened to yeah, right. Paul opens up. Yeah.
He was just there a week or so ago,
Okay.
promoting the new album.
Right. I'll have to check
Great
that.
stuff.
I love hearing them, And the first guy that put together that Let It Be movie he picked like the worst, almost like the worst clips. Like I saw that 5-minute thing was better than the full 90 minutes of the thing the guy put in for the 1970 movie.
Exactly. And how long
I'm like, he must have picked
asking?
like the worst things.
Yeah, it was like, okay, we're going to show the end. The end of the Beatles. That's what this is.
Right.
And Paul's argument in this whole thing was, that's not what we were doing. What we were doing at the time, we were together again. We were loving playing with each other. We were having fun. It wasn't like, depicted in the original footage. But I for years, I've been asking myself, when are we going to ever see the footage of that whole rooftop concert?
Right.
Now we're going to see it.
Right.
I never knew until recently that they did like 4 or 5 sometimes versions of the same song on the roof.
Right.
They just kept, Billy Preston, God.
Yeah. I love seeing it in that 5-minute footage when they're playing Get Back, and then you can see George and then John sitting there, and then John's doing some crazy thing on the guitar, getting that sound, and just that kind of stuff. It's like he's like up here with the guitar doing. I'm like, I guess that's how they got those sounds, and it's just fun. It's just fun to watch that,
Do you ever listen to the isolated vocals?
Yeah.
They have them on YouTube.
Yes, I do. I have listened to them. Yes. Which one are you talking about? I listen. Which one?
Any of them.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. Especially
If I Fell.
Especially the Lennon ones seem to be really raw. It seems like when they isolate his vocals, it seems more so.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing to me is harmonizing.
Right.
Like I try and tell my daughter when she says, "Oh, I love this band," and I try and explain to her, "Well, they're not really a band." Why do you say that? I say, "Well, because they don't play any instruments. Here's a real band. Here, check out the Beatles. They're playing their instruments, and check out their harmonizing. It's not a machine that's doing it for them. This is, I sound so old right now."
It's timeless. The Beatles are a timeless thing.
Yeah. I talk about the Beatles. I saw Beatlemania like 4 times. When I was a kid, I loved Beatlemania.
Right.
Show.
Yeah.
I used to go to the Beatles fests. Crazy.
Well, for all your connections, Dennis, I'm gathering you have never met McCartney, right?
Never, and it kills me. Absolutely kills me. I don't know what I'd do if I ever met him, though.
Yeah. Right.
Have you?
No, I've seen him in concert. That's the closest I've gotten to him. Which was pretty wild.
He said in an interview recently. Yeah, I'd love to see him in concert. My brother saw him play at the Super Bowl in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, right.
When they played the Eagles.
Right.
And I've just never gotten back together to see him. But he said in this interview with Stern a couple of weeks ago, he doesn't want to sign either. He doesn't want to sign autographs like Bill Russell. He just wants to say he'd be happy to say hello. Just say hello to me. So,
right. I remember that if I see him, but he's the only guy too. As you get older, you don't get in awe of people like with you. You're probably not in awe of anybody, all the people you've seen, Dennis. But he's the one guy that I'd probably, McCartney might be the guy that I'd be like,
Oh yeah.
I'd be in awe of him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd be in total awe. What was the thing I was going to tell you that Oh, he just wants to say hi or something. I can't remember what I was going to tell you. But yeah, I'd love to meet him. I mean, you know, he's Palm. Oh, I know. I was going to tell you that all these people who tweet about the COVID vaccine and the priority list, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, but let's please give it to Paul McCartney immediately.
Right.
Please
Yeah.
give him the
Yeah.
vaccine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right. Right. I want him out there,
right.
Um, I'm going to do a quicker version of the hit and miss, Dennis, because,
Okay.
we're rolling pretty good.
Okay.
What's the best advice you ever received?
Listen more than you talk.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Simple. Listen.
Yeah. You learn more by listening than you do, talking. Don't try and impress people with your great ideas and meetings. Listen to what they have to say. Be strategic.
Okay. I like it. I like it. If you had to meet one person other than Paul McCartney, one person in the world tomorrow, who would you meet?
Wow, that's a hard question. That's really hard. Who would I want to meet? Vladimir Putin.
Okay. Okay. Did you meet
Yeah.
Gorbachev when you were back in
Did I
the
meet
day?
Gorbachev? I did not meet Gorbachev. I met
Okay.
Yeltsin. I've met Nelson Mandela numerous times. Bishop Tutu, those people. Had some pretty funny interactions with world leaders, but yeah, I never met Gorbachev.
Who was the most impressive person you've ever met?
Nelson Mandela, without a
Okay.
question, without a pause. I describe him to people, and this is a Jew saying this, but the closest thing to God on earth is what
Really?
I described him as. That's who he is. That's who he was. Just an amazing human being. Yeah, in his presence, and yeah,
Was it the integrity, the goodness, all that?
yeah. It was just another one of those. He's not a perfect human being. He made mistakes. He was whatever, but what he did with his life, what he was trying to achieve, and what he did achieve, what he put himself through, the sacrifice that he made, the fact that he kept sane all those years in prison, that he organized everything that he did to turn that country and probably the world around. Just amazing. And then to come out of that situation and not be angry and not burn the country. The country could have burned to the ground, and it didn't. And it didn't because of Nelson Mandela. Um, you know, uh, they shared the Nobel Peace Prize. He and spacing now again, who was the prime minister or the president at the time. But he shared the Nobel Peace Prize. They weren't the best of friends, but they worked together to end the apartheid regime. You know, he everything about the guy. He lived his life for others, and to open people's eyes to the injustices. So, just an amazing human being.
Just being in prison for 30 years, then coming back, and being the
Yeah,
president of that country, and it's just an amazing. I guess it's inspiring, if someone can do that,
yeah.
you know.
Think about what he could have done. He could have taken a completely different path and said, we're in charge now and we're putting you all to death, or
Mhm.
you're going to prison. And but instead he focused people on reconciliation, recognizing history and forgiving where they could, but not forgetting, and working towards a better future for the country, and for people in general. I wish he was still around, obviously. He's an amazing human being, so nice, so kind. um, I had numerous interactions with him, stories from each one of them. Yeah, he was just an amazing human being.
We had to have a book come out one of these days, yourself, right?
Yeah, my
And
daughter always, she bought me a journal because
okay,
she wants me to start writing that book. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
always tell her, how does one write a book like that without using the word I, a million times? It's she wants me to write a book so that she'll always have those stories.
Yeah. See. Last question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
If you had one wish in the whole world tomorrow, Dennis, what would your wish be? I'm a genie. I'm gonna grant you this wish. What's your wish?
Wow. I'll be selfish and say I wish that I could live for as long as my kids live, and be surrounded by them and the love and warm feelings they bring me. And I would hope that on the other end of things, that this country can forget about the last 4 years and move forward and come together in some way. That's, I guess that's what I would say.
That sounds good.
So,
Okay, excellent.
yeah.
Dennis, thank you for coming out. This was a great couple hours. This was excellent. This was,
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time. This is Ray K. That is Dennis Alpert. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of NEWHD NYC. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform.